What's up, everybody? Punk Rock Talk, episode 4. Today, my guest is going to be Mike Virus. But before we bring Mike on here, just a couple of things to talk about. If you've missed an episode of Punk Rock Talk, you can find it now on the Havoc's YouTube channel. All of the past episodes have been uploaded there. And every Thursday, we will be uploading the newest episode after the live stream ends on Wednesday. So if you have not subscribed yet to our YouTube channel, head over there and do that. Next week, we are moving the time up 2 hours. So it will be going live at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 2:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss next week's episode. I'll be announcing the guest for next week at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. But again, 2 hours earlier for next week. Punk Rock Talk is brought to you by Dead and Buried Inc. If you are in a band and you need merchandise, then you need to contact them. They can handle all of your merchandise needs. That's Dead and Buried Inc. INC, not INK. Their Instagram handle is at Dead and Buried Inc. Again, INC. And you can reach them on their website, deadandburiedinc.com. Again, that's Dead and Buried Inc. INC, not INK. I'm really excited about this episode. I've known Mike Virus for a long time. Spent a lot of time with him on the road, sharing the stage with him. I consider him a longtime friend, and his influence in the American street punk scene is undeniable. And I've got a lot that I want to talk to him about, especially what's going on with Cheap Sex. They're celebrating their 20-year anniversary. They've got some festival performances lined up this year, and they're going to be playing Launch Off to War in its entirety. So that's going to be very exciting. So we will talk with Mike about that. If you have questions during this episode, go ahead and submit them by tapping that question mark icon on your screen. Don't put them in the comments section. They get lost there. Tap that question mark, submit your question, and we'll see if we can answer it for you. I'm going to go ahead and invite Mike here. Stand by. Okay. Now we're just going to wait for Mike to join us. In the meantime, again, if you have questions, tap that question mark icon. You want to do it early. Don't wait till the end of the episode, because we don't know that we're going to get to them if you do that. So again, if you got questions, go ahead and tap that question mark icon and submit it. Also, while we're waiting for Mike, I just want to say that this has been a lot of fun doing this segment on our Instagram. And the purpose of this for us is to bring attention to what's happening in the scene for not only up-and-coming bands, but also to bring unity to the scene. So invite your friends to be a part of this. Tell them to join us on the live stream. And most importantly, let's just keep spreading the word. If you know bands that would like to be on this, have them send us a direct message. I'm going to try Mike one more time here. Okay, sent him the invite once more. Might be having technical issues. So if we need to make up the time in this episode, towards the end we will. But just be patient while we work with getting Mike on here. Also, special shout out to our very own Justin Havoc. It's his birthday today. You should drop by his page and send him some love. We made a post about that earlier today, so he's tagged in it. So find that and head over to his page. Tell him happy birthday. I have not had a chance to talk to him yet, other than through a text message. And so shout out to Justin. Love you, brother. Happy birthday. Okay, let's see. Okay. There we go. There he is.
Hey,
brother.
how you doing?
Turn your phone the
Good
other
to see
way.
you.
Because you're...
Turn it the other way?
Yeah.
How's that?
Not that way.
Oh, all right. There you go.
There we go. That's what we want. Perfect.
The sideways shot. All right. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I was just telling everybody here that I'm really excited about this episode. There's a lot that we can get into. This episode, every episode is only supposed to be an hour. But I think with everything that I'd like to talk to you about, it could easily be 2 hours. But for the sake of consistency, we're going to keep it at an hour. We got you on a little bit late, so we're gonna push it a little bit so that we can make up the time. Okay. First things first, there's a lot of musical things that we could talk about, your history in the scene, the different bands that you've been in. But before we do that, I want to talk about Mike Virus, the person, because a lot of people don't know your personal history. So the first thing I want to ask is, what was life like growing up on the East Coast?
Growing up on the East Coast, it was there were challenges. So when I was born in January 1974. In the 70s, where I grew up, it was fairly, I guess you would say, it was fairly conservative. There wasn't a whole lot going on in the neighborhood I grew up in that I was really interested in. So I was kind of more of a loner. There was like one or two kids that I played with in the neighborhood, but I was kind of always on the outside. Sports and things, I wasn't any good at that. It wasn't really until I found skateboarding around age 11 or 12 or so that I really started to make any kind of friends or feel like I, belonged to anything really. So school was always a challenge. Making friends was always a challenge. So the neighborhood that I grew up in, Overbrook Park, was kind of West Philly. I would say more on the border of West Philadelphia. And then when I got a little bit older, we moved out to the suburbs, first to an area called Havertown, and I attended a school there called Chatham Park. Same challenges followed me there. Not really any friends, not really fitting in. Started to, have to deal with bullying and things like that at that point. Then we moved to an area called Broomall, where I actually did have a couple friends in high school, skaters. But the challenges there, I was older at that point. The football team started, drinking more and more beer, and getting tossed down the steps. And then when we were out skating, they would be blaring the Steve Miller Band and chasing us around and listening to, AC/DC at full volume. Full beards in the 7th grade. Left back multiple times, still on the wrestling team at the age of 30 or whatever was going on there. I started. But the punk rock thing kind of kicked in around, a little bit before that. I would say punk rock kicked in around age 12. So I was still in the middle school at that point when it kicked in. But the problems only got worse dealing with some of the people in the school once that kicked in. I mean, in 1986 or whatever, punk wasn't quite as accepted. Nowadays you see someone, I still get confused. I'll see someone with like colored hair and a Ramon shirt, and I'll automatically think that there's some kind of, mutual understanding. But then I realize that these things are sold in, Walmart, and, it's not indicative of anything. So,
Right.
But at this point, it was still very much, if you saw someone that was like wearing a Black Flag shirt or something, you would chase them 3 blocks down the street just because you may never find this person again, or this something you have in common with. It was a very rare thing. So it was a different time. Growing up was not easy for me because I was not able to really connect with other people in my neighborhood, my age. And it wasn't really until skateboarding entered the picture that I was able to have friends and find people that I shared something in common with.
And is skateboarding kind of like the catalyst that led to everything with punk rock for you?
Skateboarding changed. Yeah, skateboarding was what did it. There was a skateboard shop on South Street in Philadelphia, Spike Skates. And Spike Skates would have these skateboard demos, and there would be there would be flyers in the store, and sometimes there would be bands playing at these demos. And my introduction to punk rock came absolutely through these skateboard demos that Spike Skates was having. And also Fairman Skateboards was around, but they were located in Prospect Park. So anyone that's watching from the Philly area, I'm not talking about the Fairmans once it was in Westchester. I'm talking about the Fairmans when it was in Prospect Park. And they would also have skate demos, and they would have bands playing. And they started doing shows at a place called the Grapevine in Swarthmore. And this was maybe 1 or 2 years after I started getting into it. I started going to those shows at the Swarthmore, and I saw a lot of bands there fairly early on. And I just continued to keep going to these shows, Club Pizzazz in Philadelphia, and then the Grapevine out in the Swarthmore, and wherever I could get to, City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey, where like everything became about getting to that next show. It was like, I have to be there because it was the only way that I felt a connection to other people. Like I felt like I had something in common with, because Monday through Friday for me was fucking torture at my school. And all I could do is just wait for the weekend and get around, these people. And it was just like, it became everything,
At what?
In my mind, it saved my life. I was a very depressed outcast. I was not able to relate to anything or anyone.
At what age did you know that you wanted to be in a band?
Oh, I never knew. There when I was in high school, I had a band called Unwholesome Aggression. And it was just more like, I didn't really know how to play an instrument,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew I had a lot of things to say. And, at that point, it was just like, no one was singing. We were in a room and no one was saying anything. And then, it was just people playing guitars and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm a pretty pissed off dude, so I'm just going to grab the microphone and go for it. And that was it. It just felt right. I just felt like I now had an outlet, like it was inside, and now I had a way to get it out. And then so I figured, I was just going to be a singer for my own sanity. Like, for me, punk rock is not just a social thing or, friends and having fun. It was like, I need this to stay sane.
Sure.
This is like, I have to have this outlet. Like, I have to get it out. And I'm not good at football. I get beat up at school. I can't fight for my life. I can skate okay, but as far as an outlet goes, it was going to be this. And being, writing lyrics and is my outlet. It's therapy.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Most people know that kind of the beginning of your career started on the East Coast with the virus. And I do want to talk about that a little later. But the biggest topic musically today is about Cheap Sex, and that story obviously starts in California.
Yeah.
So tell us what took you from the East Coast to California.
Yeah, that was my career. So I went to school to be a programmer, software developer. I was working at the time for an aerospace company out in Malvern, PA, a suburb of Philadelphia. And at the time, it was my first job as a programmer, maybe 90, this would have been 96. I started working for the aerospace company around then. And then I had a company in San Diego contact me and made me a really good offer. And I was kind of at the time getting very involved in drug use, drinking a lot. Friends started dying off. I was in the virus when I moved. So that was the hard part. That was the difficult part. It was this decision of, the band was starting to develop a following, and the shows were getting better, and the LP was coming out, and I was left with this decision. But I also knew, that this was something I wanted to pursue. And, I spent a lot of money getting an education to become a developer. At the time, it was, very common to go to college for computer science. There, now you can learn a lot of it online, but at the time it was more common. So I decided to take them up on the offer and move out to California, and they actually paid for my relocation and the truck that went across the country and towing the car across the country and putting me in a temporary residence until I found my own place. And, so everything was made easy for me. So I took advantage of it. So I spent the next 21 years in California. And as of 2 weeks ago, I'm back in Pennsylvania, living here permanently again. So Cheap Sex started very, very soon after I moved to San Diego, because when I left the virus, it left you know, it was a very difficult move for me to do that, and it left a void, and so I was looking to fill that void fairly quickly, and so Cheap Sex, it didn't take very long for that band to get started after my relocation.
Yeah, earlier in the day we were texting a little bit, and I had told you that I didn't even realize that you had moved back to Philly, and
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person that spends a lot of time digging through other people's social media or whatever. But as a result of doing this, it requires some research. So I was surprised when I discovered that on your Facebook page today. And what is it that took you back to Philly? Was it also career related or family or both?
Well, I have a job now that allows me to work wherever I want, remote. As long as I have a solid internet connection, I can work. So, I'm still a software developer, and luckily that job allows me to be remote. And I wanted my daughter to attend a particular type of private school that would be unattainable in San Diego. Why? Our mortgage payment in San Diego would not have allowed us to afford this private school,
right,
on top of that mortgage payment. And also, the school is on 450 acres out here with their own farm. In San Diego, this type of school is not on 450 acres with their own farm. It is a very small school, and I wanted her to have animals, and I wanted her to be outdoor. I didn't want her to be strapped to a desk all day. I feel that this type of education turns kids off to education, because I don't think young kids should be strapped to a desk with 30 minutes of recess time. I think that they should be incorporating nature and being outside throughout the day. So in order to find that, it made more sense to come back here. Also, my family is still on the East Coast, and my wife, Eva, her family is all in Germany. So that put us 6 hours closer to Europe simply by moving across the country. So it's the combination of the school, which is unbelievably important to me, education, and there's very few things that are more important to me, and family, especially with COVID and them being older and risk. We haven't seen much of them, and my wife hasn't seen her family in even longer. So it was those things. Plus, not only that, I like the food better here. I mean, I like the Mexican food in San Diego, but when it comes to sandwiches and pizza and stuff like that, it's San Diego. You'll have people asking, putting artichokes on pizza and avocado and stuff. It's just I'd rather to me, it's a legitimate pizza shop. You're getting yelled at while you're placing your order, and the guy's got like 3 or 4 gold chains on while he's yelling at you. That's how you know it's good. So come back to Philly. Right?
Awesome. Yeah, I left California in 2019 for similar reasons. Moved back to Oklahoma, started a family, and my wife and I have been talking about the same thing for our daughter. Private school is something that we'd like for her future. There's just no way you can afford that kind of thing in California. It's
unbelievably expensive. Right. See, I'm trying to find ways to put my daughter in a situation where it's less likely for her to get shot going to school. You see, that's kind of a goal I have. So, what are some ways for her not to get shot? Well, one way would be to reduce the number of gun enthusiasts and lunatics going to her school.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is to put her in a school where the parents are more aligned with our type of thinking, meaning instead of resort, we're past, I'm a peace punk. I always have been. I know that that's not an in thing these days so much. It's more about, fuck everything, but I'm always going to be that. And so, for me, I wanted to find a school that was aligned with that. So we found one. So there's less chance that these kids have parents that stockpile an arsenal of weaponry in their basement. Why? Because they're peaceful. They're, for lack of a better word, people would call them hippies or libtards or whatever we're calling these people, such as myself these days, pacifists. So, we're not going to have AR-15s in our basement. What we are going to have is the ability to, sit down and have a conversation and figure things out without resorting to, Cro-Magnon behavior. So this works for us. People would maybe call us a bunch of fucking hippies, but you know what? The world's pretty fucked up, right? And so whatever way people are handling things don't appear to be working. So I'm going to stick with the peace shit because everything else doesn't appear to be working out too well. So it works for us. Yeah.
So I've known for a long time that your family life is extremely important to you.
Yeah, it's everything. Mm-hmm.
It's obvious to me just in conversations that you and I have had in the past. And I have so much respect for you in that regard because it's becoming less and less important, it seems, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But your wife has a certain medical condition that I'm sure has presented a lot of different challenges in your lives, especially going through COVID. And forgive me because I don't remember the exact name or how to pronounce it. But I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that to bring awareness to it, and also how living with someone and loving someone that suffers from something medically that is challenging, how has that impacted your view on the world?
Yeah. So this was several years back, but Eva started getting, my wife's name is Eva. She got very sick, and they believe that the condition is called atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, and basically it causes blood clots, and it started blocking blood flow to vital organs like her kidneys, and so she had kidney failure and was in the hospital for a long period of time, and I developed a lot of anger towards the health industry, the $500,000+ medical bills and things like that. Now, luckily, I have insurance, but insurance didn't cover all of these things, and fighting back and forth with them about what will get covered and what codes were used, and because certain codes weren't used, they're going to charge $10 for a apple juice or whatever, and so the Evacuate Blood Money LP was entirely the album had a theme, and it was the healthcare theme. And so if, get a good idea about my thoughts about the healthcare industry, you could maybe, give that album a listen. But we've been through a lot together, Eva and I, and her health, luckily, she's been doing well. I think that her kidneys are, her kidneys are never going to be as strong as they were prior to getting sick. And I will forever be convinced that this country, just like every other democracy on the planet, needs a public health care option. We are the only democracy, if you still call it a democracy, that does not have a public health care option. Mm-hmm. And even people that are insured end up paying a lot of money out of pocket because we're okay with giving blank checks to the military industrial complex, but not making sure our own citizens have health care. So it's something I feel very strongly about,
Yeah.
as you could probably tell. But Eva's doing well right now. And if you're interested in learning about this condition, atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, AHUS, it is a very rare blood disease, and there's only one medication out there that can treat it, and it is a medication that you basically take for life called Soliris, which is a $500,000 a year medication in this country. So, yeah, that's my spiel on that.
You mentioned your daughter.
Yes.
Your daughter's name is Lila, correct?
Leela, but close. Yeah, Leela.
And how old is she?
She's 5.
Yeah, that's got to be an amazing age. I can't wait till my daughter is 5.
It's amazing, but she definitely has learned the word no, and she's got a rebellious streak, which is to be expected with her parents. But it's all good. It's all good. I wouldn't have it any other way. Someone's got to tell me to go fuck myself, but not in those words yet. But Leela, do this. No, okay, yeah. So, yeah, it's all good.
What would you say is your favorite part about being a dad?
Seeing her play. I mean, she is social, and she makes friends easy, and she can go out on the playground and just start playing with other kids. Now, that didn't happen with me. I would run off the playground to get away from the other kids. So she's able to do things that I was never comfortable doing, and I just thank God that she didn't inherit those antisocial genes from me. Mm-hmm. So watching her play and watching her learn and seeing how quick she picks things up, and seeing her smile and happy, and in this new school that I'm so happy she's going to school, because I had friends growing up that went to this school. That's how I knew about it. And I hated going to school, but the kids that I was friends with that went to the school she's going to, they loved going to school. So I'm just happy that she's able to go to the school. I'm happy that I was able to provide the ability for her to go to this school, and watching her play, have fun, and be able to play with other kids and not have the stigmatism that I had growing up of, got to run away from any social situation, and because I thought I was going to get beat up.
Right.
I just was such a fucking weirdo that as soon as I would show up at the playground, there'd be 300-pound kids that I don't even know where they came from that looked much older than me, waiting to kick my ass everywhere I went. So, it's I'm just happy for her, and it feels good to see it happen.
Love that, man.
Yeah.
We're going to go to an audience question real quick. So let me look through that. And while I'm doing that, also, if you did not join the live cast at the very beginning of it, I announced that next week we're going to be 2 hours behind for our next episode. And I'll be announcing that guest at the end of this episode. You don't want to miss that. So stick around. And again, we'll be starting at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time next Wednesday. Let me see here. Okay. Real Damn Cruz asks, for me growing up, you were always a major hero / influence in my life, and I looked up to you and your music and what you wrote about in song. Who was that person or persons for you growing up?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll definitely say one of them is Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers. His lyrics, tremendous influence. Um, I would say that the first, when I knew that punk was going to be it for me, it was when I first heard Nevermind the Bollocks, just like a lot of people my age or even a little older. So, you know, I know John Lydon his politics have changed a bit over the years, but nonetheless, he was a major influence. But I would say Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers lyrically was probably the biggest. Joe Strummer, of course, but Cal Morris from Discharge, Steve Ignorant. So it was these bands that really kind of put the message front and center in the music. When I would buy a record, it wouldn't, sliding the vinyl out and putting it on the turntable was only the first step. The lyric sheet coming out and looking at the lyric sheet while that record was playing for the first time, that was when a record became, went to the next level, right? So the music has to be good, right? But the lyrics being good for me was what really was special. Like, you could have the most amazing music, but if you're singing about your dick or, your haircut or whatever, I mean, it's not going to make it to that next level for me. And I'm only speaking for me. I don't want people that say, oh, you don't like bands that sing about their haircuts. I'm not talking about. For me, okay? No one get crazy here. I'm just saying, for me, it has to be at a personal level, or it has to have a message for me, for it to be special, for me to want to play it over and over again, for me to want to go out of my way to see a band play. I have to connect at that level. It's just always been that way. And so those are the people that influenced me, were the ones that took things to that level, that, really had something to say and really made me think. I would have never, I don't think I would have ever been interested in politics if it wasn't for some of those early punk bands turning me on to it. I was a skateboarder, I cared about ollieing over a trash can, that was what I cared about, until punk rock came along and said, it's okay to be a fucking outcast. In fact, it's preferred.
Yeah.
Fuck those people. You know what I mean? Like, the world's messed up, so why would you want to be like them anyway? Do the opposite of whatever doing, because whatever they're doing isn't working.
Absolutely.
So, that's what it is.
I love hearing you talk about your experience with vinyl, because I think when you get into the punk scene and you discover so many bands for the first time, you literally have like a physical relationship with vinyl,
Yeah,
and
very much so.
And I love that it's still such a priority for people that are in the scene.
It is.
But at the same time, I feel bad for a lot of, younger kids that are only streaming music. Because there's something about the ritual of opening up a record and diving into it, and not just looking at a digital image on your screen and listening to it with AirPods or whatever, Let's talk a little bit about Cheap Sex.
Yeah.
You guys have a big year ahead of you with some of the festival performances that you've announced. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to talk about the beginning. You mentioned earlier that once you moved to San Diego, the priority to start a band was right at the top of your list. Tell us how it started. How did you start making connections with, people in the scene and putting the band together?
It was really two shows. when I moved out here, the first show, well, not here, I'm back in Pennsylvania. When I first moved to San Diego, about a week after I moved to San Diego, Agent Orange was playing, and I went there and met Gabe, who was the drummer and is the drummer of Cheap Sex. I was up front, he was up front. I was jumping up and down, he was jumping up and down, we were jumping up and down, grabbing each other, pogo, so we met. Then I think it was maybe a week later, the Vrookers played, and that's where I met Derek, who was the original bass player, and I think Jordan, who is now, goes by the name Ace, who plays in, well, he was in LA Guns and Faster Pussycat, and he went on to be a pretty successful rock musician, but he was the guitarist of Cheap Sex. I think a Rooker show is where I met him as well. And John, I met, I think I met him at a Xanth show, I think, some old venue called the Xanth. I just forget what show. The Stitches. I met him at a Stitches show, I think. So it was just like a few shows that were like 1 week apart from each other. And, we just got together and rehearsed, and it just clicked. It was just luck, that we met each other quickly, because I was extremely anxious to get something going,
There's a pretty stark sound difference in the songwriting style in Cheap Sex versus early Virus.
Yeah, for sure.
Was that an intentional move on your part, or was that just the result of collaborating with different songwriters?
It was a result of the coast. East Coast at that time was very heavily influenced by what was going on in the UK. We're closer to Europe. The East Coast street punk scene was very, very, very influenced by British punk, especially the second wave of it. California, has a sound, and California is going to have more of an influence of, 80s American hardcore. And, me coming from the East Coast with this kind of, second wave British punk rock influence, and you got these guys that grew up in California their whole lives, with the 80s California punk and hardcore stuff going on. You mix those sounds together, and you come up with something like Cheap Sex. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What would you say is your favorite memory from being in Cheap Sex?
My favorite memory of being in Cheap Sex would be probably the first time. I would say my favorite memory would be probably CBGB's. It was a really special one. Just to be able to have that experience, because it's a place I've been to a million times, but the rest of the guys in the band, that was their first time there, and I just remember how special it was, for them to be there. And thank God that we did play it, because the place is gone. So I would say that was probably a good moment for the band. But I mean, the band has been through so much. I mean, we have, two members dead, and John, almost getting killed. So the band's been through a lot. So it was really special. for us to be able to play CBs. Everybody got a chance to, sit on the toilet, the notorious toilet at CBGB's.
Disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in there probably 100 times, and I've never sat on that toilet, and I don't think you could pay me to sit on it. I'll just hold it in the rest of the night, shit my pants, or buy an adult diaper before I sit on that. But I think the whole rest of the band did sit on it. I don't,
Yeah,
Right.
I was there. I think it was
Mm.
2002.
Yeah.
We were supposed to play, and
Mm.
we didn't make it on time because we, never been to the East Coast, never been to New York. We were traveling in an RV, and they wouldn't let us go through the tunnels because of propane. And we were like, well, how the fuck are we supposed to get there then? And by the time,
Oh man, you missed your own show?
yeah, missed our own show at CBGB's. Sucked.
Do you know what CBGB's is now? Do you know what it turned into?
No.
So it's now a John Barbados, who's like a high-end fashion designer. So you can go in, but what he does is he sells vintage, like he has like one rack or so of like vintage punk clothing. So you can like go in there and buy like an $800 Ramones shirt with a hole in it. And then like he kept like some of the flyers and stuff like from CBGB's, so that rich people can feel like they're being rebellious when they go in there to buy their $800 Ramones shirt. It's a disgrace.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, we missed our set, but I did see the toilet.
Yeah. It's something else. Yeah.
You touched on a couple of things that I want to dive into about some of the members, but before we do that, I want to look up another audience question because we have a lot of them for this interview. And also, again, if you're just tuning in, next week we'll be starting 2 hours earlier. So if you want to join us next week for the live stream, keep that in mind. I'll be announcing the guests at the end of this episode. You don't want to miss that either. Okay. ANXIEZ. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Oh, shit. I just lost it. There we go. Do you feel like what you wrote about in Launch Off to War is still relevant today? Not to get into too much politics, but how did you feel with the way things are currently, like politically / coronavirus?
Well, I mean, Launch Off to War was written, about the Iraq War. So, right now we have troops aligned on the border of Ukraine, hoping that Russia does not invade Ukraine and then America gets involved in a new war. So I think war is something that unfortunately still very much remains an issue. Humanity is still killing each other over borders and religion and all the things that, humans have been killing each other over since the beginning of time. So I think that in that aspect it is relevant. Is Launch Off to War relevant when it comes to coronavirus? Well, no, because we, at the time there wasn't, we weren't really thinking about pandemics and diseases and stuff. There is an element there of government control, I guess. But, my views with the pandemic have been that, just like when polio or chickenpox were rampant, I had to get vaccinated against those things in order to attend school. You had to get a polio vaccine. George Washington had his troops had to be vaccinated against. Was it at that time that would have been the plague. So, Washington had mandates on vaccinations. So I guess I never really had a problem with that because I don't really view it as a government mandate. I kind of view it more as the medical community and scientific community, the consensus, advocating a mandate so that we don't infect and kill each other, and we can get past it and get back to normality. So in some ways I kind of think that there's some of that, but I think that Launch Off to War was an Iraqi war album, very much against the war at the time, and we still have wars being fought now and the threat of war. So I think, unfortunately, it is kind of still relevant. I'm not even sure why we went to Iraq to begin with. I'm not sure what Iraq had to do with 9/11 or any of that. So I do think it's relevant because wars are still being fought for ridiculous reasons, and we're still not able to live with each other. We're still killing each other over religion, borders, flags, and resources and oil and things like that. So unfortunately, we haven't learned very much.
You guys are going to be playing Launch Off to War in its entirety.
We are
at these festival performances that you have coming up this year.
Mm-hmm.
With you now living back in Philly, how are you guys coordinating for rehearsals and whatever else that you're preparing for the year?
It's tricky. I mean, we're going to have one, like we're doing Chicago is the first one of these we're going to be doing, and that's in February, so that's this month. We're going to have one rehearsal. So we're going to get to Chicago a day early, and we're going to rehearse. And that's going to be, we haven't played in years. And we're also going to have a fill-in drummer who we've never played with because Gabe hurt his hand. So he won't be able to do the Chicago show. So April from formerly of Sniper 66, she's awesome and she's fucking great, and she's going to fill in, and we're going to have one rehearsal. So hopefully we don't suck, but we're going to attempt to play Launch Off to War in its entirety, and we'll have a good time. And hopefully I won't get COVID because I'm paranoid about COVID. But I'll bring a lot of alcohol wipes and wipe off the microphone and possibly perform in a bubble or some kind of a, hazmat suit. But we'll do it.
Fuck that, man. Just buy a brand new microphone and you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, by the way, if you're a singer, you really want your own microphone. I mean, I learned this a long time ago because I forget if it was Virus I was with or Cheap Sex, but we played a show and the microphone smelled really bad. Like, club microphones are never good and they never smell good, but it was like particularly bad. And I was, the sound engineer, I'm like, what's going on with this microphone? Like it's something, do you have another one I can use? He's like, I found it, like some G.G. Allen cover band played the night before. So, you don't know what that microphone has been, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I immediately, ever since then, I never use a club. I always have my own microphone. I mean, I can't be taking a chance that some dude had a microphone up his ass the night before, you know what I'm saying? COVID or not, you throw COVID into the mix, forget it. It's just not going to happen.
I'm right there with you, man. I always have my own.
Yeah, bring your own microphone. I mean, if you can have your band members lugging around equipment and stuff, you can show up with your own microphone. They're not that much money.
Absolutely.
That's just my opinion, anyway.
Who all is in the band right now? Is it the same guys that were in the band at the last lineup?
So we have three original members. We have myself and John and Gabe are original from day one. Brock has been in the band for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Written in blood. And that is the band. Phil, I think last time you saw us, Phil was still in the band. We were still a five-piece, but we're a four-piece now. So it's me, John, Brock, and Gabe.
Awesome. I got a lot of good memories with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do.
Some of which we dropped that yesterday, a little video clip from when we were on tour together back in 2005.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot more of that shit too, so I'll send some of it to you.
Yeah, it's good to see that after this many years. It's crazy to see that shit. Yeah.
It's crazy to think that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just time flies, man.
It is. It does.
I want to talk about something that you touched on a little bit earlier, about some of the previous members that are no longer with us.
Yeah.
I remember we were playing a show together I think it was at the Allen Theater. If my memory is correct on this, I could be wrong. We were either playing a show together or we were just both at the same show, and something tragic had just happened that took everyone off guard. And you had told me that was it. That you guys weren't going to carry on as a band after this happened.
That's right.
I was so shocked. One, because I know how important punk rock is to you. And although Cheap Sex wasn't able to tour real consistently, you guys were still very active. And I just was, it just kind of in shock. One, just because of how devastating the news was, but then also the decision to end the band. But that was a long time ago, and a lot of people probably don't even know now what that was all about. Could you talk a little bit about why the band ended, and what effect that had on you personally and your mental health?
Yeah. So Chris Wick, who, if you have the Headed for a Breakdown album, Chris was a guitar player, and his mom died, and he went off the deep end and killed himself. Essentially, that's the short version. And his brother found him. So Gabe was best friends. Our drummer Gabe was best friends with Chris. That's how Chris ended up in the band, and Chris and Gabe played in a band together prior to Cheap Sex. So the band wasn't going to continue. Gabe was not in a place where he wanted or could continue after Chris died. The effect it had on me personally, I was also kind of not feeling like it was like it should continue at that point. I just had one too many people that died that particular year that I just wasn't I wasn't up for it, and Gabe certainly wasn't. So Cheap Sex broke up for a number of years until we got to the point where we felt we can do it in some capacity again, and it was right for, I think, for the time for the band to break up. I don't think we were in the right mood or frame of mind at the time. So that's pretty much what happened. And then shortly after that, we lost another member. It was the band is just kind of we there was a lot of death. Let's say. So it was right to go away for a while, and now, you know, we do a few shows a year, and it's okay, but it took a long time.
On that note, I just want to say to anyone that's watching, whether you're watching the live stream right now or you're watching this later, if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out to somebody. Your life matters, and there are resources available to you to help you work through whatever you're dealing with. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255, 24/7. You can also reach out to a family member or a friend. Just talk with someone. That's where it all begins. You have to start the conversation with somebody, and you can work through it. Your life matters. So again, if you're struggling, reach out to someone, find those resources. We normally end this after an hour. We're approaching that now. There's still more I'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
If you're still good on time.
Mm-hmm.
If so, I'd like to take a short break and then come back to dive in a little bit more and answer some more audience questions. Is that good with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and play an Evacuate song. Take this couple-minute break. If you need to get up and use the restroom or whatever, now's the perfect time to do that, and then we'll resume.
Yeah, but if you're taking a shit, make sure you flush. If it's brown, flush it down.
That goes for all of you out there, filthy animal.
Yeah. Yeah, don't just leave it. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, so don't go anywhere. The live stream is not ending. We're extending it a little bit. We're just going to take a couple-minute break, and we'll be right back. This is Evacuate. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
There we go.
this is Lear.
All right. How you doing?
She says hello.
You good. Hi.
Uh, she just woke up from a nap,
Uh-huh.
and I was telling her earlier today how excited I was to be interviewing a longtime friend, and she said, "Well, I insist on meeting him," and I
Okay.
no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. What what's your name?
Her name's Lyric.
Lear? Oh, cool name. Okay.
You know, being a vocalist and a songwriter, you would think that I was who came up with the name. Not the case. My wife came up with the name.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
thought so when she suggested it to me, because we had gone back and forth on names and couldn't really agree. And then when she suggested Lyric, I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But her middle name is Jean, and we named her Lyric Jean because my wife's mom and my mom, both of their middle names are Jean. So that'd be a cool way to kind of continue that on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, she's going to go back to mommy now.
Okay.
All right. So before we dive any deeper about some more music stuff, let me look for another audience question here. Okay, this is perfect. Because it's actually what I'd like to talk about for the next topic. Jay Kamikaze said, "What happened to Evacuate?"
So I think that there wasn't really like one thing that we just got to the point where Riff had started playing with Corrupted Youth. Riff is the drummer, and Corrupted Youth is a very active band that does a lot of touring, things that I'm just not capable of doing with my career. And they're much younger. They have the ability to months at a time go on tour, and Riff is much, much, much younger than I am. So not going to hold him back. So Corrupted Youth's a band that's on my record label, or was. So I'm very supportive of them, and I encouraged him to, pursue Corrupted Youth. And so at that point, it was, do we find another drummer? What do we do? And I was about to have a kid, and the time wasn't really there anymore. So Evacuate is a very different situation. It wasn't like death that broke the band up or anything. It was life, and it was the drummer playing with Corrupted Youth, and just the time. And also I lived really, like an hour. In order for me to go to practice, I was driving an hour and a half because the rest of the band lived closer to LA, and I was the one guy in San Diego. So driving an hour and a half each way to band practice with a kid on the way, take up my I only get weekends, because I work a lot. So I was, spending half my weekend commuting. So it just kind of fizzled, really.
I want to rewind just a little bit and talk about how Evacuate started.
Right.
Obviously, coming out of Cheap Sex and having the trauma of the band ending and why it ended, I'm sure there was a recovery period there for you mentally.
There was.
But I can't imagine that you weren't also missing being in a band at the same time. Yeah, it's the double-edged sword thing.
It's like even if you try to stay away for a while, it just something sucks you back, like that drive to either write or.
So again,
Did you lose that video from the first clip? Because my dad wants to watch that, and he doesn't understand Instagram, but he knows YouTube, so it needs to get up there.
yeah, I have the full video.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
send it
Great.
to you. We've been talking about possibly consolidating a lot of that and maybe doing like a DVD or just uploading it to YouTube or something. Haven't figured it out yet, but there's quite a.
Upload it to Grinder.
That's the perfect platform, isn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and jump back into this. Thanks everybody for bearing with us. We know that was a buzzkill, but we're gonna hope for the best so that we can continue on this interview. So again, the end of Cheap Sex, coming out of that, recovering with your own mental health, and then feeling that tug to be in a band again. Let's talk about that and how Evacuate started.
Yeah. Again, the mental health struggles kind of pulled me back into it. I always get to this point where I feel like I have to release, get it out. So, owns my own sanity. And if you'll notice a reoccurring theme in Evacuate, especially those first two albums, there was a lot of songs dealing with, not wanting to lose control or fear of losing control and trying to retain sanity and feeling like I'm trapped in a box and the four walls and these reoccurring themes in the lyrics. So that's kind of where my head was at. So it was just my way of trying to not end up back in a mental institution, which when I was younger I spent quite a bit of time in and out of. So it was just the same thing. It's just I get sucked back in. Because it's something I need to do. COVID's been a real challenge the past few years of not playing a show. I feel like, I need to do it. I just don't want to die doing it, but I do need to do it.
Yeah, I can fully relate to that because it's therapeutic.
It is very much. It's the one thing that for me works. Going on stage and, getting it out, it works. What can I say?
The sound of the Evacuate records is vastly different from the Cheap Sex records.
Yeah, for sure.
I love those records. I think the production quality is fantastic on them, but there's also just a lot more of, I guess, a metal tinge in the songs.
Sure.
There's that obvious aggressive sound in the vocals, but the guitars and drums just sound very mean. Like
at one point, Evacuate got so out of control with the guitars that we were a 6-piece band. Okay, so we were like, what's that movie? The Turn It Up to 11.
Final Tap.
Okay. Well, I have 2 guitar players. We need 3 guitar players. So we would have the whole, half these clubs have small stages, right?
Yeah.
And it'd be like just fucking band members like crowding the stage. And there'd be so many band members on the stage that I would have to sing in the middle of the dance floor.
Yeah.
So it just, it's a wall of guitars, especially on that Blood Money album. And Tony, tremendous guitar player, but he also Punk rock. He loves punk rock, but he also likes thrash, and he likes some metal. So you're going to hear, once Tony joined the band, you're going to hear more metal influence. And even in the first album, when John, he was playing an All Out Attack back when Allen Theater, that era, right? Remember All Out Attack?
Of course.
So he was another guy that was real heavily into like Forward into Battle era English Dogs and like, Massacre era Exploited, where it's just fucking, metallic punk. In fact, I think he's the one dude on the planet that actually like Brave New World by Discharge, which I can't even, I won't even allow that near my turntable. But he liked it. So, we always kind of had one guy in the band that was, into metal as well as punk. I like some metal too. I mean, I love Forward into Battle. I mean, when I put that on, it's just like it really fucking amps me up in a different way. It's just like it's such a fucking it's such a hard hitting album. It's like getting hit with a brick. It's great. But I think that had a lot to do with the Evacuate sound. Was Tony and John. John earlier era of the band, Tony later, having that metal influence. And then, us getting out of control and adding a third guitar player for one album.
As a vocalist, did you find it challenging to connect with that heavier sound? Because a lot of those songs, there's like a lot of double kick in some of those songs too, which is a totally different vibe compared to street punk. Where you're relying so much more on the up tempo, for the snare drum and all of that.
The flow is different. Yeah, I mean, like the timing. There was some tricky timing in some of those Evacuate songs where it would start, stop, and with the UK like '82 stuff, it's more like it's kind of a groove that's just like consistent throughout the song. And now we're start and stop, and then we even had like reggae breakdown in some songs, and then just these crazy leads, and I would be doing something different over that. And so there was definitely I think that it was really fun for me as a vocalist to have something, mix it up, especially after that many years of playing, I guess, for lack of a better word, street punk or some variation on it. Whereas Evacuate was more hardcore and with some metal influence in it. But it's just still a street punk because, my vocals and those drums were still kind of, in the street punk sound. But then you throw in those guitars, like Tony's guitars or John's guitars, and then it was just it added an element that was very different, and so it broadened my abilities as a vocalist, I think, a bit because of the time changes, and it was fun for me to do something a bit different.
So you and I both lived through and experienced what some people would kind of refer to as the heyday of the American street punk scene in the early 2000s. 2003, 2004 seemed to be kind of like the pinnacle of that. And I mean, every time we played shows, whether it was together or our own shows or whatever, I mean, and it didn't really matter where we went, there was always a really large crowd.
Yeah.
And then once you get into the era of Evacuate, that whole scene seemed to have died down quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a struggle for you to continue on, and playing smaller clubs and smaller crowds or anything like that?
Not really, because I keep coming back to it. I don't want to sound overly repetitive, but again, it's for me, I play in a band to retain sanity. It's a psychological thing. I am, I deal with a lot of psychological issues. I really do. And punk rock is what keeps me sane. I do it for that. I have to do it. It's my release. Those words are my release. Going on that stage, getting it out, I feel cleansed. I feel relief. So whether there's 2 people in the room, whether there's 2,000 people in the room, I don't even see it, because when I'm on stage, if anyone's watched me up close, my eyes roll back in my head and I'm not even there. It's like I don't see anything. It's just like it just comes out. I'm a different person. People that meet me outside of a show, relatively calm. But when the music starts, I'm a fucking raging lunatic. And what's going on in the audience, I don't even notice, because I'm just so wrapped up in doing what I need to do so that I can stay sane, so that I can feel good. It's a totally different thing. It's not the same. I'm not in a band for the reasons a lot of other people are in a band. I'm just not.
So on that topic of your own mental health, what do you do aside from being in a band to maintain that? Are you in talk therapy or?
Yeah, I've been in therapy my whole life. So, when I was younger, I was in and out of institutions until I found punk rock, and then I stopped needing to do that. But I've always been in therapy. I've always been working on myself as a person, because when I was younger, I was very angry. I would lash out. I would at times be an asshole because I didn't know how to deal with it. I just didn't know how to channel that anger and depression. I have a lot of fears as a father that those genes are going to be passed on to my daughter, that depression and anxiety. But luckily, so far, she seems relatively normal, other than, a 5-year-old learning the word no and saying no to everything, but that's okay. So years of therapy, being married to someone who's less crazy than me, having friends that I've learned over the years how to figure out which ones I can depend on, and which ones were only there because of punk rock, and which ones are, there when the chips are down and are available to me. Luckily, I figured that out, and there's a couple of them. Family has become more important to me as I gotten older. And it's going to sound extremely unpunk rock, but one thing that's helped me quite a bit in the past year or so is virtual reality. And not virtual reality playing games, but virtual reality in terms of meditation and, the ability that when I'm feeling like I'm going to lose my mind, I can put on a headset and transport myself to outer space. I'm floating in space, or I'm on an island somewhere, or whatever, or meditate, the meditation apps, guided meditation. So the combination of the video, the audio, and the 360, like being able to look around and be in a different place temporarily until I can calm myself down, has been tremendously helpful. So, with people that are struggling with mental health issues, if you haven't considered virtual reality, it might be something worth checking out, even as crazy as that sounds. Someone's asking, where do I score my acid? So I know it does sound like, it's psychedelic what I'm talking about in some level, but anyway, it's worked for me, or it is working, I think.
So punk rock, I think, attracts a certain individual.
At least it used to. I don't know what it attracts now, but yeah.
You might be right there.
Hmm.
But I myself have a lot of those same battles with my mental health, and there's a lot of parallels in your story growing up to my story. And punk rock was something that I found refuge in.
No.
Like you were saying earlier, like the message of punk rock basically is like, who gives a fuck that you're not like those other people? You're better off that you're not like those people.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely something therapeutic listening to punk rock and connecting to it when you're that angsty, young, confused person just trying to navigate your way through adolescence, because that's where most of us find it, right? It's in our adolescence.
Right, exactly.
What would you say to the adolescents of today that are discovering punk rock for the first time and connecting with it because they have these similar feelings that you and I both had growing up of, why am I not like these other people? Why am I so pissed off all the time? Why am I depressed? What would you say to those kids that are seeking for that connection, and how they can find it not just in punk rock, but in something else? What else would you recommend to them?
Well, I think that it's not about what you consume, it's about what you create. So you feel better, right, when you create something because you see the fruits of your labor, and it gives you something to feel good about. Like if you create something and you see that other people are consuming the fruits of your labor, it feels good. It's human nature, right? So you get the reward is that you created something that did not exist. So if you're a depressed person, punk rock is a great thing because the whole thing is about doing it yourself. So I would say that putting on a show, in my day it was creating a zine. Maybe today it's a blog, a website, a social media page, whatever it is, or whatever it is you enjoy. Or if you're a person that doesn't necessarily like to be on the front lines, you're a person that likes to be more in the background, booking the shows, or if you're a more politically leaning person, setting up a protest, or volunteering at a women's center, volunteering if you're an animal rights person, animal shelter, just any of these things where you're taking control of your own life and not consuming. Because consuming and consuming and consuming, you started after a while feeling a little bit useless, right? Because you're not creating. Life is about creating and pushing yourself and leaving a mark. And so you need to create to feel better. So the answer to depression is to create. The answer to depression is to push yourself out of the depression. And the way you push yourself out of the depression is to give back and to volunteer and to be active and to make the world, even in your own little environment, better. You can't solve the world's problems. The world is going to be fucked no matter what you do. But you can make your world better, and you can leave your mark. And that is how you're going to survive depression. And I've learned that. It took me many, many, many years. But that's the way it is. And so someone getting into punk rock now because they don't feel like they fit into society, the answer is going to be to create, give back, get active in your scene, and then take beyond scene into the rest of your life. At the age of close to 50 at this point, you're not going anywhere. Nothing, it's going to always be this way. So that's the answer as far as I'm concerned. That's the advice I would give.
Okay, so it seems like we've had a little bit of a drop in audio on your end. So I'm not sure what that's about, but...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. I don't know what happened, but...
What happened was someone's repeatedly trying to call my phone, and I'm not answering, and it's fucking up my audio.
Got it. To touch on what you were just saying, and how you mentioned earlier about your daughter and how you want her to grow up in an environment where, she feels protected, she feels safe, those types of things, and concerns about you passing on certain genes to her.
Right.
I love that from my perspective, we're kind of entering this new era of the focus is being put on the importance of mental health, and more people are talking about it.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. That, when we decided to start this new segment of Punk Rock Talk, I thought, we can talk to interesting people that are in the scene about music, their bands, or promoters, and, other people that we want to bring on the show. But what I was not expecting was how literally every episode, whoever I'm interviewing, the conversation shifts towards mental health without me guiding it that way.
Yeah, because punk rock is not, I don't think it's good for normal people, really. I don't think it's meant for them. I'm not saying they can't like the music, but I'm talking about as a lifestyle. It doesn't lend itself well to a person who's getting laid on a regular basis, a person who shows up at school and there's 50 people surrounding them to ask them what they did on the weekend. Punk rock lends itself well to somebody who has nobody, who's the last person to get picked on the sports when in gym class when they're, it lends itself well to somebody who can't relate to anybody else. Okay. So because of this, these are people that, have issues, and I think that's how it's meant to be. So there's going to be depression involved in that because you're living the life of a outcast. You're living the life of someone that most people can't relate to. And you find over the years, you find the strength to respect that about yourself, to view that as an asset. I feel that I stand strong on my own now when I used to feel like I was weak. Not on a physical, I'm not talking about physically, like I'm not going to kick anyone's ass. I'm not even going to try. But when it comes through getting through hordes of bullshit to succeed in life, I think I've done okay. So that's what I'm talking about.
I think that it's very punk rock to do well for yourself and, be able to tell, uh, to strive to live the best life that you can, whatever that means for you. For me, that means being the best software developer I can be, and the best dad I can be, and best husband I can be, and have a band that I have on the side so that I don't lose my fucking mind and I have a way to let loose. So whatever that means to people listening and out there, you got to just figure out what your goals are in life and don't let anyone stand in your way no matter what, because that is the essence of punk rock, is standing strong on your own, and fuck you to anyone who tries to hold you back, tell you can't do it. And then what you do is you do it better than they ever did, and go back to your high school reunion or whatever and go tell them to go fuck themselves. I haven't gone back to my high school reunion yet, but maybe one day I will, because there's a couple people out I'd like to probably, see how many times they've been divorced and how bald they are, and tell them to go fuck themselves. But we'll see.
Well, yeah, especially if you're living back in your hometown area.
Yeah, that's why I did it. I moved back so I can go to my high school.
Yeah, I got an invite for that last year, and my wife came across it, and she said, "Do you want to go to this?" I said, "Fuck no, I don't want to go to that."
No, I mean, what am I going to go? Like, oh wait, weren't you the guy that tossed me down the steps? How you doing? I mean, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? They're probably still in high school. They got left back so many times. They're probably still there. You know what I mean? Probably still on the wrestling team.
Right. I want to go to an audience question real quick. So let's see what we got here.
I don't know. Your volume is fucked up now. What's going on?
I don't know.
Sound like you're in a wind tunnel.
I don't know. My volume's all the way up.
It's probably it's all right. I got to get a new phone soon.
Okay. So Dismantled Records asked, touch on Evacuate Records. Did you accept demos? People reach out to you, or did you seek out bands with the style you wanted to hear? I'm going to make this a two-part question, because another question was submitted yesterday on the same topic by somebody that could not join. That was from Punkcore Catalog. They said...
Punkcore Catalog?
Yeah.
That's got to be Dave.
It's not, actually.
That's not Dave?
No.
Okay.
But they asked whatever happened with the Action second LP that was never released.
Yeah, I actually get that question quite a bit. So I was going to release that, and I played it. Okay, I'm just going to be completely honest. I played that record for a few people, and I'm afraid that that no one's going to, I'm just being honest. I'm afraid people aren't going to like it. And I'm going to end up with like 400, 500 LPs left on the shelf that I can't get rid of. I'm just being honest.
Sure.
It is such a major departure in sound from what people know Action to sound like, that I think that, I'm afraid that the first 50 copies, 100 copies will fly. People will get it. And then once people hear the album, and word gets around, that I'll be left with all the copies. So I'm just, that's the honest answer. I'm afraid to put it out. Why? Because it sounds so unbelievably different than the first album. It doesn't mean I don't like it.
Yeah.
It just does not sound anything to me like that first album. And so I was going to put it out, and then I heard it. And then I played it for other people, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. And that was the consensus. So that is the reason I didn't put it out. I just can't be left with 500 albums sitting in my fucking closet. So great band. The second album just doesn't sound like the first. Fact.
Sounds like
how do I, for the label, if right now I just moved across the country, the the funds right there aren't there right now to put out too many records right now. Let me get some money back in the bank, and then I'll put out some new records. How will I do it? By bands we play with, demos I hear. I'm still I'm very active on Bandcamp, listening to new shit coming out. Does the band have to sound exactly like my band? No, I don't want them to sound like my band. My band sounds, the way they do. You sound the way, your band should sound. So, I'm always listening to new music. I get bored with just listening to bands that came out, 40 years ago. So, yeah, I've got my ear out there, and if band is interested, send them my way. I can't tell you when I'm going to put it out or promise I'm going to put it out. But some bands, that's the thing. Like, sometimes there are some bands that will send you a link, and then when you don't put it out, they get offended. It costs a lot of money to put out vinyl, especially these days with the manufacturing shortages we have and stuff like that. It's really fucking expensive to put out a record. So if I don't invest thousands of dollars into your band, that doesn't mean you're a douchebag or I don't like you. It just means that I don't have thousands of dollars right now to put into a band that I don't feel I'll be able to sell. Right? I just can't afford to have thousands of records sitting in my closet. I have to be able to get sell those records. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, I want to make a quick announcement to anybody that's watching. Next week, we're going to be moving the show ahead 2 hours. We have a special guest next week that's not able to be on at our regular time. So we'll be starting it at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to announce who that guest is at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that. This has been a fantastic interview, despite some of the problems we've had with the technology. And I want to move on to our last subject before we wrap it up with a little bit more Q&A from the audience. Let's talk about the virus.
Right.
So most people, my age anyway, their first impression, I see there we go. I saw the pinwheel of death. Like, oh, fuck, hope we're not now.
Yeah.
Most people my age that were getting into American street punk in the early 2000s, the first time they heard anything about My Virus because of the Virus's first record.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Virus and how it formed, because most people, I don't think, even know that story. Fat Dave is still in the band. He's the only original member left in that band. And he's been in and out of it. But you and him were in it in the very beginning together. Were you and him friends and decided to start the band together, or how did that all come together?
Yeah, well, Dave was in Bob's Squadron, and the original drummer of Virus was also in Bob's Squadron, Jared. And they were having, there was some issues or something with the band. It wasn't working out or whatever. They were looking to do something. And I was pretty much spending like every weekend in New York. The street punk scene in New York at that time was really like something else. It was really huge. And, I wanted something like that in Philadelphia where I lived, right? So I wanted to start a band, and there really wasn't bands with that sound in Philadelphia. You had Violent Society, who was an exception, but I really, I was going up to a lot of shows, Public Nuisance, Casualties, Maggot, The Worst, there's a whole bunch of these bands that were playing in New York. But the thing is they weren't political. And, you know, I wanted that. I wanted that look. And that's how I looked. And I wanted that sound, but I couldn't stand the fucking lyrics. So what was I going to do? Right. I mean, like, you know, I start my own thing. So, Jared and Dave they liked this idea. And we knew this guy, Chris, who was playing in a band called US Expulsion. Chris was on the first Virus split we did with a band called the Manics, another band from the New York area, which had Elaine from Devotchkas and Rick from Casualties, and then this guy Stewart, who's no longer with us, on vocals, and this guy Chris on drums. And so we did a split, and it was and Chris was on that, and he was also on the first the 7-inch, the Global Crisis 7-inch, which came out right before the first LP. So Chris was in the band. We knew him from the US Expulsion. And then I had a friend, Jeff, who played bass. That was his first time ever playing an instrument, was on that first Virus record. That split one, rather. So that was the band. And it pretty much started because there wasn't really anything like it going on in our city. And we saw what was going on up in New York. And we felt that, we wanted some of that locally. And so we booked some practice space. And I think the first practice we wrote the song Visions, which is on that split with the Manics. And initially it was going to be this band that kind of had some of it sounded like a 77 type punk rock band, and some songs would sound like UK 82, but everything with my vocal style came out sounding like aggro, like too aggro for a 77 band anyway. So Visions, you can hear the Discharge influence in that song, and that's kind of set the standard. And then the aesthetic, the look, the logo, all that, it was the whole thing. It was a lot of fun.
So earlier in this interview, we were talking about having a physical relationship with vinyl. That experience, I call it a ritual, where you're at the store, you're thumbing through it, to see if you come across something you like. Once you see the cover art and you like it, and you're like, hey, this looks like something I'm going to be into. And if you're not able to listen to it, back in the day, you couldn't. There wasn't really a way to listen to it without buying it.
Tape trade, back of Maximum Rock and Roll, some dude in Japan, you'd send him a tape. You get a 10th generation copy of some fucking rudimentary Peni album that sounded like it was recorded on a boombox while the record was playing in the attic.
Right.
Different times. Totally. And then you go try to find the record, and good luck. So
the Virus's first record, that was my experience. I came across it in a record store, and I thought, looking at the cover, I was like, this is fucking badass. If the band sounds half as cool as they look, then I'm going to like it. And taking it home, putting it on my record player for the first time, and hearing the opening track, it's fucking relentless right out the gate. We are the punks and you are the bastards, right?
Yeah, we didn't waste any time getting to the right.
So was that intentional?
Yeah, very much so. Everything was intentional. I never believed in beating around the bush. So it was like, we are the punks You are the bastards. Try to hold us down. We'll just go faster. I mean, it's just bam, done. You know.
Yeah, there's no build up to it. Like there's no
No, you
feedback.
don't need to build up.
There's no drumstick count in, any of that. It's just boom, punch you in the fucking face and move out of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a similar thing going on with the 7-inch before it, like, dun, 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 bomb drop, boom, done. Like, there's no, um, I just always kind of felt like, let's just get to the point. Like, I don't know. But yeah, it was intentional though.
So the opening track on that record and the title track on that record, those are my favorite on it. What's your favorite track on that record?
On the LP, the first LP, Still Fighting?
Yes.
Well, it's going to sound. I would say I really like Forced into Death because it yeah, I had relatives that perished in the Holocaust, so I guess that one has a lot of meaning for me. But Battles also because it's very much about everything we've talked about in this interview about staying strong and the battles you go through in life and overcoming them. So I mean, I would guess Battles would be up there for me. Yeah.
So after you formed the Virus and you guys started playing shows,
Mm-hmm.
you talked a lot about the New York scene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there was a point where you guys kind of looked at each other and you're like, yeah, I think this is fucking working. Like, people are showing up to these shows, or at the very least, they're not leaving when we play. Is there one specific time that you can pinpoint where you guys had that discussion where you felt like, okay, this is working for us?
Yeah, I think it was when we started seeing the logo on people's jackets. I mean, it was like it went from a very small group of we played with Special Duties fairly early on, and shortly after I started seeing that logo popping up, and I'm like, well, maybe maybe this is gonna be something, and we started playing right at Coney Island High up in New York, and then we started getting on these pretty good shows, and I started seeing more people with the logo, and then I would be singing, and I would at first if we would do a cover song, I'd put the mic out, and then I started putting the mic out a little bit more, and like people knew the words, and then I was like I guess people are catching on, and then then later on there'd be a bunch of people at the show, and I was able to I could tell that there was more and more people coming there to see us. So I started thinking like this was going to be something special.
So after you guys are obviously getting some momentum,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of presented with the whole fork in the road that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, shortly after.
And I'm sure that was really hard to kind of mull it over in your mind.
Of course. Yeah.
Especially to approach the other guys, because when you're in a band, everyone in it is hoping for some type of growth or success with it, to where it makes sense to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you were thinking about the other guys and not just yourself, of like,
yeah,
I want to do this, but how do I tell the other guys? What was that process like for you?
I mean, a lot of ways, I think I did it incorrectly because I don't think I gave as much notice as I should have, and I think it led to, some bad feelings within the band at the time. I mean, years have passed, and I don't, I think that's not an issue. But for a while, I did, and it's because when this offer came, I jumped on it, and there wasn't a whole lot of notice to give. And the band at that point was really starting the trajectory. It was going up, and then the singer leaves without a whole bunch of notice. So, um, so there it was very difficult, and it was really hard for me because I felt like I was losing my friends, and I also knew that there was some anger, and you know. I always try to be supportive as much as I can of the virus. I even put out there a record on my label, right? And when they would come through town, I'd try to go see them play and be supportive. But I had a decision to make that was right for me, and I did the best that I could with the time I had to make the decision. I mean, when a company comes to you with an offer, they don't say, get back to me in 6 months, right? So I made a decision to, I went to school for this, and this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I needed a career. I didn't think that drinking 40s was going to pay the bills too well, so I figured I would do this. So I pursued my career. And eventually, I think that the other guys, understood. And I think that, enough time passed that everyone thought it was for the best. I mean, Paul came in and clearly did a great job as vocalist and still is doing a great job. So, I mean, it all was okay, I think. But it was very difficult. And, even to this day, I still think about, I still think about it. It's impossible. I mean, the band is always going to be important to me, and it's just always the way it's going to be.
So, early on, after leaving the virus and moving to California,
Mm-hmm.
starting Cheap Sex,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that you were still supportive from the get-go because the first show that we played with Cheap Sex was in San Diego, and the virus was on the bill. And I believe you put that whole show together, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. And I mean, I wish there was a way to do both at the time. But I always will be supportive. There was a period of time where I'm just going to be honest, where I wasn't 100% supportive, when there was no original members of the band. There was a time where the virus had no original members. I wasn't okay with that. And I'm, it just, it was upsetting for me. I'm just being honest. I went and saw them play, and I left. I couldn't take it. But the configuration of the band now, Paul was a very early member, and you got Dave in there. Josh has been in the band for a long fucking time, and Tyler is a great guy. He's been in the band for a while now too. I mean, it's just that there was like one period of the band's history that I just. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't go see them play. I couldn't. It was upsetting for me. I'm just being honest. But I'm not going to. I mean, there's no original members of the band. Me being an original member, why would I want to see that? So.
I think that's a totally fair point, and I completely respect your honesty on that.
Yeah, and there was makeup and stuff. You know, I couldn't take it. You know, there was a lot of things going on. The makeup, the no original members. There was, yeah.
Yeah. To my knowledge, there was never any recorded material from that lineup, and I
No,
think,
there was.
but it
There
wasn't.
was. It wasn't released.
Yeah.
I mean, they redid, and there was like, you know, songs, you know, that were redone from my time, and I think some from Paul's time.
Hmm.
If I remember correctly, you know, I don't know if they wrote or if they released anything that was, you know, original, but there was like redone songs, and from what I remember.
Yeah, and when they reformed in 2013, they also had Mike Authority in the band again for a
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was cool to see, you know, some more of those familiar faces in the lineup.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah. Mike was there for a while. In fact, the tour that Evacuate did with Virus, Mike was in the band at that time, and then he left shortly after that tour, if I remember correctly.
So this year, you guys are going to be sharing the stage with the Virus
Yeah.
at some of the festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys talked at all about the possibility of you being on stage with them?
No, no. If they that's something for them. I don't ever. I'm not. I don't ask if they. I'm not their singer anymore. If they want me, or they feel like they want me up there, they will. They can ask. I haven't. You know, it'd be nice to know in a little in advance so I can remember. You know, not embarrass myself and have a chance to go over whatever song they want me to do. But I remember most of those songs. I think it. You know, if they asked, I would do it. You know, I mean, these songs hold a lot of meaning to me, so there's no reason for me not to do it. It's up to them though.
So, from what I know, there's two festivals that you're sharing
Mm-hmm.
with them this year: Sounds of the Street
Mm-hmm.
and CY Fest. Are there
Mm-hmm.
any other fests that you guys are going to be on the same bill together this year?
No, I think those are the only two. Um, yeah, yes, yeah. Those are the two. The only two.
I can only imagine how that feels for you when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the flyers for those festivals and seeing
Mm-hmm.
two of the bands that you started
Mm-hmm.
being on the top billing. What's that like? I mean, it's kind of a rarity
Mm-hmm.
in this scene for someone to be a founding member of multiple bands that are, you know, at top billing.
Yeah, there was one show. I'm trying to remember if there was ever for some reason, and I might be totally wrong. I think I remember one show where it was Virus, Cheap Sex had Evacuate on one show. I could be wrong, but it is definitely possible. For some reason, I'm remembering that. But it's it does it. How does it feel? I mean, I like seeing that people still care. Like I spent a lot of time thinking that nobody cares about stuff that I've done. It's the depression. It's the inability to to feel like I've really accomplished. Even when I do, like I just don't see it, or being the ability to be proud of something that I've done. But then when the band plays, um, and you know, and I see how people are reacting, and particularly when they play a song that I wrote the lyrics to, it makes me feel good. Why? Because it it reconnects me to a different version of myself. You know, when I hear them playing a song that you know was written that I wrote in 20 years ago or whatever, over 20 years ago, it reconnects me to a different time in my life, even though it's not me up there doing it. And then when I see kids singing along to it, then it makes me feel like maybe there was some value to this. You know, maybe it was more than just me trying to retain sanity. Maybe it's helping somebody else retain sanity or something, you know, or have fun. It's also about fun too. I mean, it's, you know, it's not like I'm incapable of that either. I mean, I do have fun. Just, it's not, fun isn't the main motivator. It's, it's fun, but there's other stuff.
You mentioned, you know, watching kids sing along to it, and I think that's such a big part of the punk scene. It's really a youth-led movement.
Oh, it always will be. I mean, this is not, you know, it is now a different generation, and I want it to be that way. I mean, I am still there, but it is not, it is their scene. Okay. I mean, I am a guest. That is their, my time was late 80s, late 80s, 90s, you know, this is their time, their bands. I'm a guest. I am a babysitter. I don't know what I am, but I'm still having fun, and I'm going to keep crashing the party, but it's not my party. You know what I mean?
So there's kind of this, I guess what you would call theory that the punk scene kind of moves in waves.
It does.
And we certainly experienced that in the early 2000s. I mean, street punk in the United States was insane.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the flyers for these upcoming festivals that Cheap Sex is on this year, and it's insane because it feels like that all over again. But then there's also, you know, the young upcomer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there's a bit of a street punk revival happening in the U.S. right now?
Sure. You know, I think that it goes back and forth between this, like, lack of a better word, crust, and then street punk, and then crust, and then, you know, so right now, I think that there's a lot of the 80s bands, or the 70s bands, the 80s bands that I grew up, you know, going to see play. These guys are in their 60s and 70s now, not touring as much. Charlie Harper is, you know, I don't, you know, he's still going, but he's a rare exception, right? But he's not touring the U.S. too much anymore either. So, you know, these bands, you got members unfortunately dying, or they're not touring as much. Then you got COVID, and they're not coming over. They're not taking the risk, and you can't even travel. So that leaves the 90s bands, right? That leaves the 90s bands that can play these festivals. So that's my generation. You know, that's stuff like that, the early 2000s. So these are become the, for lack of a better word, the classic generation of what's around today to put on a festival. Yeah, I guess, you know, if you want to, you know, these bands that are in their 70s now, you're lucky if they have like the original merch guy left in the band. You know what I'm saying? Like, who are you gonna fly over? I mean, you know, you got a couple bands still exploited, and they'll come over. But you know, there's not many of these bands left that are touring in any kind of configuration that anyone would recognize. Every time there's a big festival, it's Cockspur, almost on everyone. Now, I love Cockspur. I'm not bitching. I'm just saying, at some point, you run out of bands, you know? So you got these 90s bands. And so that's why you see, you know, these bands on all these festivals. And it's a perfect opportunity for the younger bands to get exposure on those shows. So instead of putting, you know, 20
of these older bands on. I like seeing it when they put half and half and give more younger bands the exposure, and it makes it more interesting to go play the show because I get to watch those bands play.
So speaking about those younger bands,
Mm-hmm.
When Cheap Sex and the Havoc were playing regularly,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of drama behind the scenes among bands.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, some of that drama continues today, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everybody that I've talked to, like yourself, someone that's, around my age, we've had this time to kind of grow up, for a lack of a better term, or take account of our own mental health
Mm-hmm.
and prioritize it and experience that growth to where now we can talk through things and have face-to-face conversation as men should do, and women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What would you say to the younger bands that are coming up right now or just starting out, and they're trying to make a name for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they might be experiencing some of that behind the scenes drama themselves?
Yeah, I would say that you have to just take a step back from that drama and decide what's important. A lot of this energy is wasted on things that really are not important. What is important? What is important is seeing the world, getting out there, going to Europe. What's important? Putting out your next record, doing it yourself, putting on your shows. What's not important? Arguing about what someone said when they were drunk. Who fucked whose girlfriend? This kind of thing. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? No, I guess if you fuck your friend's girlfriend, that does matter. Don't do that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of this drama is counterproductive and doesn't matter in the long run. And 5 years from now, you're going to be laughing about whatever's going on. So just get on with it. Stay focused on getting out there and seeing the world and doing all the things that you're doing because there was a reason you started doing this, that you wanted to do this. You get into a band because you want the camaraderie of a band. You get into the band because you want to travel and you want to play. You want in a band because you want to put out records and you want to make things and you want to write songs. Stay focused on those things, because the other shit, it's a waste of time. And the other thing is understand, please, that punk rock is not an excuse to be a stupid imbecile. You know what I mean? You don't have to drink yourself into oblivion to be punk, or shit your pants, or whatever the case may be. Just stay true to yourself and live the best life you can. Get out there and see the world, and just fucking kick ass on the stage, and try to have fun doing it. The other stuff is it's it's what jocks do. They drink themselves into oblivion until they puke, and it's you don't have to do that to be a punk rocker, believe it at all.
Fully agreed. One of my favorite lyrics from the Unseens, the Anger and the Truth.
Mm-hmm.
What separates you from the dumb jocks when all you do is fucking drink?
Yeah, I mean, I like to have a beer, but I'm not gonna. When I was younger, there's a lot of things I don't even shows that I can't even remember because I was completely shit-faced. Now, I would like to remember some of those shows,
but I honestly can't. Now, if I could go back in time, I would have showed up at that show probably a little more sober so that I could actually remember the show. So it's better to remember the shows you go to. It really is.
This is reminding me of my last interview with Rock Stitches. Those guys,
Mhm.
same thing. Like, I asked them what their favorite show was that they had played. The answer was, I don't really remember many of them.
You see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
uh,
I think
um,
the moral of that story is, you know, we all get into this thing because we're attracted to it because of something that's going on with who we are as individuals, what our personality type is.
mhm,
And it's an outlet for us.
mhm.
But when you are going through things and you're looking for essentially coping mechanisms, music's a healthy coping mechanism.
Oh, yeah.
But once you start mixing in all the other things
Mhm.
come along with the music scene, drinking or doing drugs, whatever, and that starts to get out of hand, all of a sudden the things that were making sense in your life that were helping, they're not as important anymore because you're
No.
stuck on the other things that are unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, there were times, I mean, part of the main reason I moved to California was clearly the job. That's like 90%. The other 10% is because I had friends that were starting to drop like flies, and I was seeing myself, you know, at my drug, the one that I really was doing quite a bit of was Coke. And anytime I would get money in my pocket, instead of buying records or paying rent or doing those type of things, I was doing a very expensive drug of choice. Okay, and then of course I would top that off with beer and alcohol, and then mix of those two would turn me into a complete fucking asshole. So that was the other reason, is I wanted to get away from that, and it worked. I haven't done a line since I moved to California, which is now over 21 years ago. So would be the other reason. Um, I do think it can really fuck up your life. I think it can turn you into a complete asshole. I don't like being around it. If um, you know, if I had a choice, I wouldn't want to. I would never play in a band with another drug addict in my life. So that's just my opinion on it. But I understand why it happens. It happened because I was depressed and because I was looking for an escape that I didn't know. I didn't have the skills to deal with at the time, and now I do. So there's no reason for me to go back to it.
Before we wrap this up, I'm going to do one more audience question.
Mm-hmm.
So I promised them that I would. Let's see here. Stay Gold Jeff asks, what's your favorite show you attended as a fan?
Holy shit. Favorite.
That's got to be tough because I know it's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of shows.
Yeah, it's a lot. I would say probably Toxic. The ones that like popped at the top of my head, I mean, probably the Ramones at Tower Theater, or the Toxic Reasons. The Rebellion festivals are always good because you have like every fucking band ever is on there. So it's not even a show at that point. It's everybody's playing. So but I would say my favorite non-festival show, I think, is what he's asking. Just a show.
Yeah.
I would say that Probably, for me, it would probably be that Toxic Reasons show. I've never, or Bad Brains on the Eye Against Eye tour. That was my favorite. I've never seen to this day a performance like that. On that tour, they were unstoppable, and I'll go to my grave saying that Bad Brains in their prime was the best live band ever. I've never seen anyone be able to top that performance that I saw.
Okay, last question. Now that Cheap Sex is celebrating the 20-year anniversary and you guys are going to be doing some performances, has there been any talk about new music?
I keep talking about it. I would like to. I mean, how the fuck did I survive 4 years of the Trump administration without having any new songs? I mean, I'm like going fucking ape shit for get it together. I don't know what to do with this. I mean, we're like 2 steps away from fascism and the end of democracy, and we're not writing any fucking music. Are you kidding me? So yes, I would like to write some music, and if I have to trap them in a room to get it done, I would like to. The only challenge is we have 3 members living on the East Coast now, myself, John, Gabe, and Brock is still out there in LA. So, maybe we can collaborate online until we get together or something, but I hope it will happen. But, I don't play an instrument, so it's kind of up to them. Yeah.
Technology has brought us to a place now where you are able to do these things, and it's miraculous to me. When the early 2000s, when we were active with the Havoc and you were active with Cheap Sex, if you wanted to be in a band, you had to be in the same room with those motherfuckers. You couldn't be on posts or anything.
Yeah.
But now with the ability to use FaceTime and to record your own music with your own studio set up in your house and to just email tracks back and forth. I mean, that was a huge reason why I was like, okay, I'm moving back to Oklahoma.
I mean, look, if you have Guitarport and GarageBand, which is a free application, or there's so much free shit out there. It's totally possible. So if we don't write anything, it's not because we don't have the technology to do it. I hope we do, because there's a hell of a lot to write about right now.
Yeah.
It's like a fucking gold mine right now when it comes for a lyricist, a punk band. You can't ask for more material than you have right now.
True. This
makes Reagan look like fucking like a blip on the radar. There's so much shit to write about right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Aziz Ansari has a new stand-up that is on Netflix right now.
He's funny. I like him, and I like Sebastian Maniscalco because
I love him too. He's hilarious.
He reminds me of everybody I've ever met in South Philly. So,
this new stand-up that's on Netflix, it was filmed, I think it was in 2019 or 2020, and he was talking about Trump, and he was just like, dude, I know we all hated him, but the content, the dude had the content. That's why everybody was talking about him, because of the content.
Cheap Sex has not written a song since we did a 7-inch years. I forget how many, 2007 maybe, or maybe 2010 or something like that. But we do have a Trump shirt, and if you look at our Facebook page, we have Trump with the Cheap Sex. So even though we haven't been able to get it together to write a song, we got it together to make a fucking Trump shirt because the content was so good that I couldn't not do it.
Oh, Yeah.
So I agree. Biden, there's some material, but Trump was a fucking gold mine. Jesus, yeah,
Complete insanity.
insane.
We've got to wrap this up for time.
Hmm.
I mean, this last couple of hours has flown by, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure everybody watching has also really enjoyed it. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be our guest. Before I let you go, are there any shout outs that you'd like to give?
Yeah, I want to, of course, first foremost, if Eva's listening to me ramble on, I love you. And if Leela's listening, I get to bed. I don't know why you're still awake. Um, and if my parents are listening, I apologize. But to everyone else, just please try to make the world a little less crazy for people such as myself and others that actually still give a shit. It's just it's out of control. Just everyone chill out. Try to not kill each other. And if you do come to the Chicago show or any of the others, please make sure you don't have COVID. I don't want to fucking die. And I love everybody that's ever cared about these bands. Sometimes it just amazes me that anyone still gives a shit. And believe me, I appreciate it. And to all my personal friends that are listening, um, you're appreciated more than you know or that I let on. So thank you for listening to me ramble for the past couple hours. Jason, thanks for having me on. It's been great. And I'm looking forward to catching up in person. So take care of yourselves and each other. Yeah.
All right, Mike, thanks again. Yeah, I also look forward to catching up in person whenever that time comes.
Yeah.
Until then,
Where are you living again? You're in the Midwest now, right?
I'm in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Are you maybe go to the CY Fest?
yes.
Yeah, you got enough time.
Yeah.
Make a vacation out of it. Less like me. Yeah, it'll be going back to California as a vacation. It's strange.
Yeah, there's some talk going on about happening around that time. So if everything pans out the way that I think it's going to, then yes,
Mhm.
I'll absolutely be there.
All right, man.
All right, brother. Well, take care of yourself. Thanks again. And we'll be in touch soon.
All right, man.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, before you leave the live stream, just a couple of things for everybody that's watching. Normally I play music out, but I can't do that because of some Wi-Fi issues. Next week, we are moving the show up 2 hours to 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. Our guest will be Josh Nutting. He is a promoter in Chicago, and he is putting on the Sounds of the Street Festival happening in Chicago February 11th and 12th. It's also his birthday that day, so we're going to have a little bit of a early birthday celebration for him. We're going to be talking about not just the headliners, but some of the Chicago locals that are going to be playing that show. So you don't want to miss that. This episode will be uploaded to our YouTube channel tomorrow. Now, I do not know yet if the first half of this interview was saved since it was interrupted and we had a crash. Hopefully Instagram saved it. If not, then it's just going to be this second half, unfortunately. But subscribe to the Havoc's YouTube channel. You'll be notified anytime we upload something new. There's a lot in the works that we're going to be uploading to that channel, not just these punk rock talk episodes. So make sure you subscribe there. And lastly, based on what we talked about during Mike's interview, again, if you are having suicidal thoughts, please reach out to someone, talk with them. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. Again, remember that your life matters. It is worth it. You just have to begin the conversation with somebody. Thanks to everybody that tuned into this live stream. We're excited for Josh Nutting being our guest next week, and we will see all of you then. Until then, up the punks.